Hey, how's it going? Jason here, and in this episode we're going to be working on this crepe myrtle tree I have right here. It's a 5-gallon from my nursery, and we're going to see if we can come up with a foundation and the structure for the branches. So the crepe myrtles are one of my favorite types of trees. They're drought tolerant, so they can be a little bit more forgiving when it comes to watering. But one nice thing about them is that they grow extremely fast. Look at how flush this is. I mean, this is spring growth. Look how green it is. They are deciduous, so they will lose all their leaves during the winter, but when spring comes around, they just pop out everywhere. So you can be a little bit more aggressive on your pruning, and you can train your branches really easily with some wire. The branches are a little bit brittle, but if you catch them young, they'll still be flexible enough to put wire on there and actually shape it a little bit. So right here, I chose this front because it had a nice root base. It has nice taper from this angle right here, right there. It's got a couple main trunks. It's got two actually, 1, 2. So one of the things we have to do is choose one. We have to choose one primary trunk, and I think it's gonna be this one right here. It's the longer one. Taper's really nice. It goes all the way up to here. So basically it just follows this one right here. So I've got 1 or 2. I've got this one and this one. So I'm gonna choose this one. And essentially what I'm gonna do with the other one is I'm gonna cut it back so that it serves as a side branch. And one thing about these trees is that you'll actually see these a lot in the nursery. So if you go treasure hunting, you go nursery hunting, these are trees that you're gonna find a lot of times. You're not gonna find, those ideal branches all the time in the nursery. You're not gonna find a 5-gallon can where you've got one main trunk and you've got this really nice first branch coming off the side. A lot of times you'll find them where they kind of clump up or they have 2 branches coming up. And what you can do instead of just eliminating it, in one of the previous videos, I discussed how you can do a full reset and then wait for new growth and then develop those just basically from a reset. What's one nice thing you can do with these trees is that you can work with one of the thicker branches and just turn it into a first branch. So sometimes it'll go up a little bit. See how this one right here, this one right there, it'll go up a little bit, but then after that we can trim it, we can cut it back, and we can train a branch going to the side or even still coming off at an angle so it looks really natural. But you can put it off to the side and you can still take advantage of this thicker branch right here. So one of the nice things about this tree is that they grow really fast. So it's deciduous, but once spring comes around, they always bud out. Even when you think it's not, even when you cut this back to just a tiny little trunk right here, they always come out. So what we're going to do on this one is we're going to select some branches or try to get some general branch structure going on. And what will happen is that we're going to reduce this tree a lot. And the goal of it is to set a foundation so that as each growing season progresses, every time we have another growing season, we get new branches. And from there, we can start to create those paired branches. So from 1, I'll split it into 2. And from those 2, I'll split it into 4. And then we can continue to do that until it's got some really nice branch structure. All right, so since we're going with this one as the trunk, this one right here, I'm gonna angle this a little bit more because I want that kind of centered right there. So we can already tell from this tree that I've got competing apexes here. So I got one branch right here, this one right here, that's growing extremely tall, which is great because that's going to be a perfect leader to keep on using to keep on growing out the trunk or to thicken the trunk. So I'm just going to leave this one alone until I'm ready to cut it back. What I've got though as a problem though is I've got all these branches here and they're competing with that main trunk. So what I have to do is turn those into side branches so that I can put all the attention onto the main trunk here, and then these guys on the side here, these thicker branches, I'll reduce them down and develop some new smaller branches so that the proportion stays correct. You can see right here, I've got this really nice branch right here, and I got a little bit lucky because this one is thinner than this one on the right here. On the camera's angle, this one on the right. So what I can do is I can save both of these thick branches and they'll still stay in proportion just because this one on the bottom is thicker than the second one. And then what will happen with this main trunk here is once I cut this one back right here, and I let this main one grow with this leader going all the way up to the top here, that one will thicken up and get thicker than this side branch. So it'll all stay in proportion and it'll look really nice. So right now I'm gonna do some major cuts to these branches so I can start to develop or first cut back this growth so this one right here doesn't continue to grow out that way, and this one right here doesn't continue to grow out this way and thicken up as opposed to this one in the middle. All right, so now I'm gonna break out my saw, my favorite saw, and I'm gonna make some cuts right now, and it's gonna reduce this tree a good amount. All right, here we go. Okay, so you can see I reduced some branches. Basically, these were all going up. If you remember a few seconds ago, they were going up. And I cut them back to where I had some side branches coming off. See these little guys right here? See these ones right here? And what I'm going to do is put some light wire on these guys just to train them into the spots I want them to grow. But I'm not going to cut them yet. I'm going to let them continue to grow so that they can thicken up and kind of establish themselves before I can cut them back. All right, so I wired the tree right here, and basically all I did was wire them into the spots that were empty. This tree is going to have a little bit more of a broom style quality to it. Since all these branches are kind of coming up this way, I'm not going to fight it by pushing everything down. I'm going to kind of go with it and cut them back as they grow so I can start to split these into pairs. So rather than fight it and make this go down, because this right now the movement's all kind of going up, so I want my branch structure to continue to go up like that. As you can see, it looks a little bit funny because I've got all these branches that are basically growing that I'm going to cut back later on so that I can start to develop more ramified branches. So right now all these right here are just basically structural branches or primary branches that I'm possibly going to use. I saved some that I might not keep, but for now I just want to keep it just to make this tree look a little bit more full. I've got this crazy leader right here that's going straight up. It's actually past the camera. It goes about maybe another 2 feet over it. I lower it, you can see how long that is. So it's pretty long. I'm going to let that keep on going, and that's basically going to be used to thicken up this part right here so that we can get some better taper or thicken up the trunk as well. And then you can see that there's no triangles or anything right here because it's still basically in repair mode. It's not a full reset. I actually did the reset 2 years ago. So this is actually already getting some of the inside branches, these ones right here. I'll be able to cut back once once it loses all its leaves, I'll be able to cut back again in late winter, early spring, and then I'll be able to select the two that I want to keep. Because right now there's only one, so eventually I'll get branches in the growing seasons coming up. I'll get branches coming out of these. So next February or March, I'll be able to cut it back even more and select the pairs. And from there, the next season kind of gets easier and easier because then I'll just be able to build pairs on pairs on pairs. And then that's how you get sort of that finer tertiary branches and sort of those smaller branches. All right, but for now, that's how it kind of looks right there. I'm going for more of a broom style on this one just because the branches are kind of fanning out from the base like that. Rather than lower all these down, coming down like this and fight the tree, I'm gonna go with it so it kind of is gonna reach upwards, kind of like this. Can you imagine the branches are gonna kind of reach outward like this as it continues to grow. When I get to the desired thickness right here, then all I do is cut this off, and then we just work on maintaining and cutting back and pruning back the branches over here. So the nice thing about these crepe myrtles is that this one I'm working on a little bit late, but had I worked on it before all the leaves had come back, it would have been better because then I wouldn't have had to contend with all these leaves, and then I could just focus purely on the branches instead of all the foliage. But it's not a big deal. I know I'm still going to get buds out of here. I've got another one. I've got a few in my nursery still that are just budding everywhere. So I'm not too concerned about that. But for now, I think this is as far as I'm going to go. I'm going to cut this back again in February, and I'm going to cut it back to those pairs because right now I've got one branch coming off here. I'm pretty sure I'm going to get branches coming off of this, and I'll be able to select 2 from there, and then possibly even be able to cut this one shorter, and then I can start to get those finer branches showing up on the tree. And then with the movement, I'm just following with the movement here. It's kind of fanning out like that. It's not a full broom style where it's all going to be fanned out like this. It's kind of in between. I really don't want to fight the movement of this. You know, if you look at the movement right here on the, if you look at the movement on the branches here, that kind of comes out like this, kind of comes out like this. And so my branches right now, I've got them wired, kind of agree with that. So it kind of is going to go out like this. The tricky part is getting past that first year, which is basically the repair year. After that, you start to get some branches. And then from there, you can select it. But after that, when you get those growing seasons coming every year, you'll be able to select the 2, and then it'll start to develop really quickly just because it's exponential growth on the branches. So at some point, you got 2 to 4 to 8, you got 8 branches coming off of all these, and you've got to start cutting back or eliminating branches just because you have too many. But the hard part is always getting past those first 2 years, which is the repair, the reset year, and then the first year where you get just a single branch. So in terms of care of where these guys are located in my nursery, they're in full sun. So they're getting full sun even during the heat, and they love it. The Crepe Myrtles love full sun. They don't mind the heat that much. In terms of root pruning, when it comes to repotting, you can prune them really nice. You can prune them really aggressively. As long as you wire it in, put some good soil mix, and you're good to go. So if you have a chance of getting a Crepe Myrtle, I recommend them. The leaves are very nice. They're very small. And as you prune them back, the leaves actually get smaller. One thing we always got to keep in mind is that the tree is always in development. So over here, it's really heavy. You can see it's really far out. It's really wide over there. Over here, it's really far out there. Eventually, that's going to get pushed back, and we're going to let this grow in. So this is going to be balanced a little bit more. And once this is developed in here, this little empty spot right in here, it's going to create a really nice crown. It's going to look very nice. We have to imagine what it's going to look like in the future when this section is all filled in. And that's the harder part to visualize, but once you can kind of visualize and imagine your structure or your branches developing there, actually let me take a branch really quick and I'll cut it. So if you can visualize it, when you start to develop structure like this, that's when your tree starts to, when you start to see the, if you've got branches up here, that's when you start to see that, oh, okay, there's the tree, that's starting to form. But unfortunately, when you don't have it, it looks a little bit bare, but you gotta imagine that you're going to wait for something like that, and that's when you're going to start to create that crown, and that's when when the tree starts to really take shape, and that's when it starts to look really nice. All right, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you have any questions, just leave them in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching.